And it is August 29, 2017. It is 8:47 p.m. I am going to speak on my findings of what has occurred yesterday and today based on the frequency and the energies, the codes, and everything put together to what has been happening as far as being back in Atlantis and my twin Rondi and the energy that's been flowing between the both of us. I am actually integrating the shadow aspect of myself. I even realized that, my sleep patterns had shifted. I used an incorrect word saying it was wait, let it, it's off basis, but it had shifted for the past 2 days where fell asleep in the night instead, like 9:30 and up at 3:30 a.m. And for some reason, I was looking at it. Okay, I knew that codes were coming through to me, but also I went back, in time when I started out on my twin flame journey, twin flame path, and I was not comfortable sleeping in the nighttime anymore. I would sleep during the day and I'd be up all night. And so as I came to understand more about what was happening, because, whenever I'm going through these experiences, I take note of what's going on because I choose not to dive into fear or misunderstanding what this path is for me and what I'm experiencing because of what I am going to be helping others to understand their path and their journey. There's no set formula to this. So, and I don't call it an experimentation either. It's a memory. It's a memory. We're bringing back things into our memory, and it's not learning. It's not a lesson. Getting it, speaking it out still into existence to what this is. And so I realized that I was to sleep at night. I was to sleep at night instead of going to sleep in the morning and leaving out the night. Because, when we bring things into balance, it's not where we're doing things just one way. So there's moments when we'll sleep during the day and there's moments when we'll sleep during the night. I woke up at 3:30 in the morning. I was having breakfast at 5 a.m. and then I'd go back to sleep like 7, 8, 9 a.m. And then I'm up in the afternoon and then I felt tired and I'll eat and then I'll go back to sleep. So it's like there is just wherever, however, my higher self is having it happen and this direct connection from source, because everything that have been experiencing is a lot coming through from source using my body and everything that is integrating, because as what was shown to me from the beginning when I started out on this full-blown journey, which was back in 2014 when Rondi found me, is the fact that we are having the experience of what we know. Things are happening experientially, and we're clearing out the past that we've had and to bring it into integration in the physical world. So I was listening to a video. So in other words, whatever exists on the other side, I feel like I want to go back to my notes again. I know that there's times when I've gone back to these notes that I took when I started out and I started writing and writing and writing. And now, I don't choose to want to write because there's so much information, there's so much data. And there's times when Spirit says, we're going to go back and we're going to go back and refer to notes and things and then bring it together so that way it makes sense. So that way it makes more sense, to what's happening here. And, I look at this here, how Spirit has me go back to this dream I had on January 3rd, 2015. I dreamt that I was in a hotel around a table with 12 women and men all together, just like the Lord's Supper. But it was more conventional, more modern. We were eating, listening to music, and my college friend Marilyn was by a computer playing music, and I was surprised that she was playing music like a DJ. And a young dark-skinned female was sitting across from me, and the voice of the Lord told me to say, "Queens, rise." Again, queens, rise, rise. And I then asked God, is it okay to do that because others might look at me strangely? And God said, yes. As I said, queens, rise, rise, they felt jolted within themselves, but it was only 3 of them who responded. I continued and said, kings, rise, in a lower tone, because I remember myself in the dream. It was a very powerful dream for me. And the males were awakened, but in a more calmer manner, more quietly. The females had a stronger jolt, as if they were putting themselves and aligning themselves with their own position of power within themselves. And a young brown-skinned black American guy who looked like he was in his late or mid-30s asked me, how did I do that? And how was it that I was able to awaken them like that? He touched my hand and asked me if I can tell what was our relationship like in the past life. He was very open and eager to hear my response. I tuned in and told him that I felt peace with him and the relationship we had. It was a relationship of utmost admiration and respect he had for me. It didn't feel like a sexual relationship, more like a deep bonded relationship. And that's what I wrote. And then I go into January 21st, 2015, where my mom was in a room with me and she showed me these newborn kittens. And I asked her, how did Sasha, which was my cat that I haven't, no coincidence, the anniversary of her transition is going to be next month, October. I mean, excuse me, not next month, in October, not next month, October. Next month is September. And she was pregnant. And I asked my mom in the dream, how did Sasha end up pregnant and have all these kittens? Because, Sasha, I had her in the house the entire time that she was with me from she was a kitten. She never went outside except when she escaped 1 or 2 times, and that was when she was smaller. And so in the dream, in my mind, I knew she wasn't pregnant, but she smiled and said it happened already. And I went downstairs and noticed all these sticky notes to do with my clients were missing and all that stuff. So anyway, I looked up what it means of newborn kittens. And I know I've talked about this so many times in the book, but you see, Spirit has me go back and look at this, especially because of what's happening or what has happened within the past 48 hours. And to dream of newborn kittens is recovery from an illness. And at that time when I had the dream, I wrote it down and I wrote down the meaning of what was being shown to me by Spirit. And it says here, I feel that it means that I'm recovered or recovering from the illness of mankind altogether. And I've given birth to a new life for all generations represented as kittens. All the different colors were kittens. And so, according to scriptures that Yeshua had his 12 disciples when it was actually 24. It was 12 and 12, 24. And we go in cycles of how many increments of shifting that has been made. And so I always knew still that it was the feminine who was to rise in her power. The feminine has to rise in her power. The feminine energy has to come into her full glory, her full essence to who she is. And as she does that, then things come into balance as far as with the masculine counterpart. And so I know that there's some who teach out there once again about self-love. And I do believe and I know that self-love is extremely important. It is. But for me to teach and say that this journey is only about self-love and that it's only about what we're doing only for healing within ourselves, then we will be back to square one again as far as separation. You see, as far as separation. And so I choose to speak on this because, even though there may be some that I'm listening to in terms of whatever information that's put out there, Spirit wants me to listen to it because I am here to clear things up and I'm bringing things into the feminine aspect, the feminine voice, because everything that was written in biblical scriptures, the Quran, the Kabbalah, all these things came from most of the energy of masculine, patriarchal, shifted away and to have the feminine energy withered away, dismantled and distorted. And you see that frequency that comes with the feminine energy is it's potent, and when I say potent, meaning that it's powerful, but it's not powerful to have power over someone. It's powerful for what comes together with the masculine part, the masculine counterpart. And as we are more and more coming into balance with ourselves, that parts of ourselves that is coming together into balance. And it's not where one person, 2 people are the exact same match for each other. It's what balance is as far as complementing one another, the yin and the yang, the polar opposites and the similarities, you see? The light and the shadow. And so for the last 48 hours, I have been integrating my shadow side, which is representing my twin. And then my divine complement comes into play because he's just like me in the masculine form. And then my twin represents the similarities and the opposite to who I am. And so it was essential, and it has been essential for them to be in the picture with me in this lifetime because of who I am in the past lifetime as the goddess Aset. I am the first daughter and the first part of the first entry into this physical world as the incarnation of the divine feminine. I'm the embodiment of the divine feminine in her entirety. And so with that, whatever had happened during the beginning and the course of time had, I would call it, it was like a spin tail, it spun out of control. And it's because that there was someone and others who decided to turn away from themselves, to turn away from the light, to turn away from the truth, to want to experiment to see if there's a way that things can be manifested or brought into existence without being higher in consciousness. And so as the biblical scriptures were written, that mankind fell from grace, descended into consciousness. And even still, when that did occur, it had to happen for its reason. It had to happen for us to get to know ourselves and to separate it from itself. The soul chose to separate, and that's where that Big Bang theory comes in. It's like at first there was nothing. Remember, that's what was written in the book of Genesis, and God had me continuously stay on the path of using the first book of Genesis, the first chapter. First there was nothing, there was the void, and then there was the Big Bang, right? And when you think about the Big Bang, that has to do with how we enter into a space of masculine and feminine coming together and merging with each other, merging with one another. We had the Garden of Eden where we were in pairs and threes. There's some who had a template of twos and threes, and so this has been a divine blessing and a template that has existed from the beginning of time. The alchemical marriage, the creation, that burst of stars that came from the biggest star, and so the Big Bang theory occurred, and we separated ourselves. We fragmented. And that part of that fragmentation separated into so many different things, difference of genders, cultures, religious structures were created. Anything else that was created as far as languages separated us, tongues, dialects, different parts of the lands started to separate also. Many countries were developed, and then the monetary system came into play also. And then we have the governmental system, the political system, the church, the religious structures. I did repeat that, but I'm just bringing it all into what happened. And then as far as the feminine aspect, some of these religious structures created an aspect of the female, she's not to wear makeup, or she shouldn't wear makeup because that's not natural. And so that lowered her consciousness and her feelings again. Women, as far as when we wear weaves in our hair and wigs and all that stuff, where we became so creative with what empowers us and lifts us up in vibration, wearing our hair high, in terms of elevating ourselves with the crown, in terms of the rituals that we have with the baths and what the menstrual cycle meant, and the power we had with the moon and the full moon. And we were labeled as witches, and we were sorcerers and whoremongers because they didn't understand the sacred prostitution and the sacred sexuality and what that meant. So it was labeled as we were labeled as whores and prostitutes, and and then the control and power came through with our sexual organs as well. And so things just started to descend and descend and descend and descend. And then things shifted and changed also for the females and the feminine, because there were some females that knew they had power, and there was suppression of the feminine through females, and also suppression of the feminine through masculine, the males as well, those who carry the masculine energy in the male body. And then there was a period in history where the females were so empowered that the males were only used for procreational purposes. And that's when things switched up, where some races and some cultural frequencies and countries have something in place, incorporating it into religion, where the female is only for procreation, is that she's not to understand the pleasures and the true joy of that sexual energy and what it means, knowing that there was power that comes together, integrating with the sexual, the sacred sexual energy that comes from the feminine energy, as well as the masculine energy. And so, as I go through this, like just trying to do this like briefly with how I'm describing this, how Spirit has guided me to speak on this and to clear things up, because one of the things I want anyone to understand is that we are recreating our templates. We're recreating our lives. We're recreating the experiences that we've had, and we're shifting away from the distortions and that false reality that was created through the patriarchy system, which started from what I know, Constantine and the European and whatever. At this point, it really doesn't matter, because their names and labels and where what one started. Because, one of the things, as I've stated before, is that Spirit says that it's important to focus on the now, focus on what's happening now, and not just what has happened in history, because we are closing the doors to some of the stuff and storing it in the Akashic records, as far as the experiences that we've had. And we're taking what serves us into this current reality, and we're embodying new templates, new codes that were hidden away, and they were locked away, and they're locked away within each and every one of us. Okay, so, and as we come into contact with another person that has certain codes, as we come into contact with one another, the newer codes and frequencies are starting to come through, as we're also clearing out the old customary thought process and relationships, patterns and behaviors. Because one of the major things that has happened on the planet is that we came into this physical human body vessel, starting out with what we're clearing and coming back to through relationships. That's the major key, through relationships. And throughout humanity's history, from the beginning till now, one of the major themes has been what has occurred when it comes to our loving life, and what we are in terms of being in love with one another and having someone that we're connected to. Okay. And it has always been that we have been blessed by our unions from the very beginning. And then it was until we turned away from each other, we turned away from God, we turned away from the light, we turned away from ourselves, but it was still on purpose, because there was a longing that we had as a overall soul beings, okay, all together, there's no separation. And it's because we were in so much joy and blissfulness on the other side. And that joy and blissfulness on the other side wasn't enough. We wanted to know what it was like to experience what we know and feel. I refer to this like reading a book. You read a book, you read everything that's happened with that person, the event, whatever the case may be, but you just have an idea based on what you've read, but you don't know what it feels like, and so just like a woman who has had children, okay, she has many different pregnancies and deliveries, and they're all not the same. And so we gather up all these experiences. That's where twin souls come in. We gather up experiences of life through multiple lifetimes to what we're perfecting and coming back to ourselves at a higher state of consciousness, a higher embodiment of the self, a higher and a more greater self-realization of itself. And we all chose to do this together individually and collectively. And so based on whatever has happened during the course of history and humanity's history for hundreds and billions of years, we have brought forth ourselves into this reality, okay, in the third dimensional realm, to embody the higher frequencies of what we know. But we all decided to do this in different intervals, in different stages, okay? And one of the things that has been brought to my attention, to my memory, is that being in love is not out of the equation. So I know that there's some out there who are saying that, yes, we're here to come back to self-love and our twin is here to activate us back into that. Absolutely. But guess what? There is still something missing. I had the experience of having a full body sacred orgasm. I've had my Kundalini awakening energy centers. My chakras have been activated. I'm already way past 24 chakras right now. I have been ascending higher and higher and expanding wider and wider and going deeper and deeper in consciousness. And so as that has happened and occurred, I've been so far advanced with my experiences, and I am an ancient soul. I'm an ancient soul. And so I am the female, I'm the feminine, the female with the feminine energy that has come to balance out my divine male counterparts with me. That even if it means that they're in a sleep stage, or that veil that has covered them for now, it is in its place for a reason. And because if it was a case where, things were just jumped into as far as being together and all that stuff, then guess what? We'd be just staying like on a karmic wheel, like a energy of not moving anywhere, not progressing. And when I say progressing in terms of coming back into that wholeness, coming back into that harmony. And that harmony entails the pain and the joy, the dichotomy, because, you know, in the realm of the absolute, where everything is in absolution, if everything is in its perfection on the other side, and on this side, on the earth, it's relative. We're in the period of relativity. We're in an energy of relativity. And so the realm of the absolute and the relative is what's coming together. It is together. It's just integrating more and more and more. We're templating it, okay? Especially a lot of those who are the first wave of twin souls that agreed to be in the first wave, to be ahead of time with all of this, because of when the fact that there are more souls that are becoming more awakened to themselves and choosing to want to understand this process, okay? And so for those who are going through the experience, you know, there's things that are happening that are being either recorded or spoken of, or being spoken of out there, whether in writing, blogs, YouTube, and all that stuff. But there's still more to this, what's happening, why Spirit has me speaking now. And one of the main things that I must speak on is that we're here to not only bring self-love back into ourselves and healing with all of the things that we've experienced, and as I've been speaking of for the past few days, is healing our emotional bodies, because that is one of the biggest aspect of what has started the crumbling of so many things throughout our lifetimes. This pain that we've carried, the broken heart syndrome. And then their incarnation has come in because of the misunderstandings of where this broken heart comes from. And still, I don't just talk about this. I study this. I'm observing this, and I'm taking notes here again and again and again. And I have repeated most of this throughout the beginning of when I started recording in this audiobook. And still, whenever something repeats itself and I come back to it again, that means, you know, God is taking me wider, higher, and deeper. See? So I'm going to read some notes that I took. I don't have a date here in this where I took notes of this back in 2015. And this is what I wrote. What is the difference with how we are ascending in this lifetime compared to when Yeshua walked the planet? And especially because everything that is being spoken of is coming back in its highest, purest state, especially through the feminine voice, to bring things into balance and to release the false reality and all the distortedness that has occurred throughout humanity's history. And so what I wrote here is rising in the physical body to feel and understand yourself while you're in your body. Heaven is now here. That's why I had to come down, but I still maintain the power and light of feeling within myself. I have a fuller, clearer understanding with the data that I collected while operating within my soul level. So we're in a past life review, and I wrote here, the purpose of past life review, because when you cross to the other side, a life review takes place. So the difference now is that it takes place while in the body instead of when you're detached completely from the body. You see? And so I wrote here also about some love poems, you know, that have been stated throughout history. And, you know, all the pain, the heartache, and all that stuff that has occurred throughout lifetime, right? Of course, because it was mostly based on being codependent on others. And each one of us have been searching and searching and searching for love, searching to be loved, searching to feel love, feeling disconnected from the divine, and not remembering that we've always been connected to the divine, because whatever had happened with that separation phase of during the time of Atlantis, and you know, I refer to that in the scriptures again. When I refer to anything, I'm going to refer to scriptures, I'm going to refer to the planets, I'm going to refer to everything, because it really doesn't matter what label is placed on it. And I think it's really kind of sad that people waste so much energy and time on what someone may label with something, because as far as in the human mind concept, we still name names with things so that way we can identify an understanding of it, but just that you don't have to hold so strongly to it in terms of how it's being identified. But the message is, the theme is, are you getting the message? Are you receiving the message? You see? So we allow ourselves to come to a state of intelligence instead of remaining lower in ignorance. And so I don't want to get off track, but so what is shown to me is that throughout history, there has been that longing and feeling and searching for love, searching for true love. And the reason is because initially, well, how we were created was we were created androgynous as far as twin souls. And there are some of us in our soul family that they have been connected to someone. And so we're heading back to that place where we are designated to be with our true love. We're designated to be in our joy. We're designated to be in love. It's just natural to be that way. And so that consciousness that has existed is the consciousness in the past as far as being separated. And that with this journey, this ascension journey is about being by yourself. And that's why in the scriptures, they purposely had put in place as if Yeshua was by himself and that there was no female involved. And so people live throughout lives and centuries with this consciousness of that you're going to be by yourself. You're going to raise children by yourself. You're never going to find anyone to love you, ever. And if this person comes along, then someone comes along hating and saying, oh, no, it's too good to be true. Oh, no, honey, he did this and so it's not. Instead of each one of us following our hearts. Okay? And so I'm not going to paint a pretty picture here, but I'm going to speak the truth. And the truth of the matter is that we are healing from so many wounds that have been taught, passed on from generation to generation. These are the generational curses. And I only say curses, and when one refers to as the sins of the father, that's passed on to the children. But I don't want to use reference to these words out of context from what was written. But it's more like the sin represents missing the mark, missing the point, the misunderstandings, the misrepresentations, the confusion, the chaos. Because there was a breakdown of language barriers. There was a breakdown of understanding what was really written and what was really happening. Because I've stated before, what if the Bible and all these scrolls and stuff that's out there, what if it was audio, like how I'm doing an audio book? And still people were trying to tell me, no, I should do writing. No, I'm not. Because then there'll be more confusion again. And I'm not here for that. I'm here to speak truth so you hear it in my voice and it'll ring to your soul. And whatever divine codes that flow through me, that it is heard and felt. You see? Because I'll speak truth into your soul that you feel it. And what makes sense also, because I say, even though when we're all going through this ascension, apply common sense. We all know how many songs out there have been written, sung to do with heartbreak and heartache. Good morning, heartache. The heart knows what the heart wants. Romeo and Juliet. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. To be loved, to be loved. All these songs. What do you think the soul is saying in an overall encompassing, huge message here? That we're longing for something. We're longing to not only connect to ourselves, but to connect to someone that we're in love with, and also to the divine, that holy trinity, the holy triad, the holy grail. You see? Connecting, something that enters into something to create the big bang. What do you think they came up with that thought? Ooh, you're going to bang her? You're going to bang him? It was distorted, of course. But because that's the natural state. And so the religious structures and family structures created that you're not to talk about sex. You're not to talk about what the true sacred sex is about, because it's nasty, dirty, and it's just for procreation. You're not to feel anything through it. Those are the things that we're taught. The woman was not allowed to understand her vagina, so she was told not to touch it, not to feel it, not to understand it, and that she's only to allow someone to enter into her because it's arranged and because they want to continue the family dynasty. Okay? She wasn't to feel what it was like to have that orgasmic. And that the thing is that the human race has distorted it so much that they're not even understanding that orgasm that flows through from the feminine to the masculine is what brings things into true creation. It's what manifests things into our reality, that brings things on with the light and the consciousness, the knowledge, all of that. That's a part of the process. To being higher in that state to God. That's where the truth lies with these divine relationships. So even if we say we can do this by ourselves, well, sure, absolutely. You can have that feeling and essence of connecting to God through within yourself, because I had that experience. I was ascended out of my body while I was in my physical body. I was walking around in my house like I was on stilts for 2 weeks, and I didn't want to come back down. It was a state of euphoria that I was in. And immediately within myself and the conversations I was having with the Holy Spirit, Mother and Father God, was that I hear God saying, you know, child, why you must come back down here. You must come back. I didn't die. I didn't have to die out of my body to feel it. I was already feeling it while I was conscious, in a conscious and subconscious and super consciousness state. I didn't give a fuck about the bills. My cell phone was getting cut off and this was getting cut. And I still didn't give a fuck. I just stayed in this blissful state without any physical person. And all I could think of is, wow, imagine what it would be like when it's with my divine counterparts. That is what has not been done before. Spirit has always said to me that whatever that is happening now, in the now moment, what we're heading back to, what's progressing faster and faster is experiencing what it's like to be the love and have this love that you are experiencing with someone else who is being the love of themselves as well, together. The greater glory of Mother and Father God coming together again, back into its original state and euphoria, together as the parents that they are, with no more separation. No more am I going into other distant lands and I didn't have my divine counterpart, and I cried 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 and I cried, and that pain was so deep in my soul that I cannot forget it. And that's what I was experiencing last week for 2 days. Brokenhearted and pain from being separated. There is no way under the sun, moon, and the stars that I will ignore my feelings, because your feelings and the experience that you're having is the strongest message, language, everything. And when we don't listen and pay attention to these experiences, what will happen? What will happen? It keeps repeating itself. And so when I see something come into my space again, I got to go back to it again. And I'm like, wait a minute now. Okay, I'm in Mercury retrograde, so there's something I'm reviewing here. And I said, no matter how much joy I've had within myself, no matter how much I have cleared things, no matter how much I've brought things to my self-love and everything, there's still something missing. And that's where the sin comes in, missing the mark. It's in Aramaic, by the way. And what's missing is the love of my life. And so therefore, Spirit reminded me today, August 20th, again, because I was listening to a video from someone out there, putting it out there that this blissfulness is not about being with your twin or anything like that. So I'm saying, wait a minute, now, are we supposed to ignore what's there? And I know that God was dangling the carrot because it had to be that way. We have to go through the separation because it brings us into perspective. It allows us to step back out as if we were in our movie, because if you're all in it, they say trying to tell to be, you're in the forest and the trees. Is being able to step back and look at things from a perspective, to understand it, because we chose to understand ourselves, and we chose to understand ourselves not just from a soul perspective, but in the physical world. We cannot leave the physical aspect out either, because then we'd be separating ourselves again. And so the soul chose to experience itself through the physical body. And it was a matter of it remembering itself while it's incarnated in the physical body, while it's experiencing this fullness of joy, while it's experiencing this euphoria, while it's experiencing it through the pain and the sorrow and the suffering and the joy and the laughter and the pain. You see, it chose to go through all of this until we reach to that state of where we're no longer feeling this pain. But we must go through this pain just like a mother who goes through birth pains and then she gives birth to her child or her children. And so we're giving birth to a new aspect of humanity. And I tell you this, we are giving birth to ourselves with our divine partners, our divine counterparts. If you choose to believe that you will not, then you will not. If you choose to believe that you will, then you will, because this is an opportunity for you to now finally embody the love that you have been desiring and longing and searching for, whether you're a female or a male with carrying the feminine energy frequency, or a female carrying the masculine frequency, or a female feminine, it doesn't matter. We chose to demonstrate what it is like to experience love in its highest, grandest form through many ways, because in God's house, there are many, many mansions. That's the part in the scriptures that's referred to as, in my house, there are many, many mansions. So therefore, judge not, lest ye be judged. Do not judge what another soul's path is on. We do not know what that soul's journey is. We're all here on our divine purposes, in memories and clouds and veils and lifting of these veils and lifting of the clouds and the sun and the rain, the moon, as you know, it's like the scripture said that God allows the sun and the rain to shine on the just and what we label as the unjust. You see? And so in this time frame, in this period, this moment, we are in this energy from the beginning again during the time of Atlantis, and what was separated from the masculine and the feminine form when they turned away from the feminine, when they chose to go another way because they wanted to be in control. And all it was just to do all of these experimentation to see how, hey, I can find a way to create this without connecting to the essence and to divine source. And once those fragmentation took place, that's when the heart starts to die and the sorrow begins and the roses turn to thorns, and the grass doesn't grow, and then the hard work begins, to work hard towards what we're attaining instead of remembering that we can be creative without doing anything. We can be created by being that which we desire to experience. And so that memory is what is coming back, and it's happening already. We are incorporating, we're merging, and it has been merging. It's not that it's going to happen, it already is happening. And it's for each soul to remember that parts of themselves, because we all have a soul contract. We all have a contract to bring forth the truth, whether some are sleeping or awake. There are some who are sleeping to facilitate those who are awake, and to also be reminding yourself that you're awakening within your awakening. There's layers of awakening. There's layers of what we are doing and being to come back into that state of grace from which we came from. You see, grace is what brings us home. Home is where the heart is. Home is what we're coming back to while we're in the body. While we're in the body, we are embodying the divine feminine and the divine masculine codes. So that way we are now recreating the world that we once had that was golden. We're returning back into that golden place, that golden consciousness, looking golden. Everything is golden. I saw the golden homes and I saw the gold on the ground. I saw all of these things. That's what existed. And all of that reality is what we're recreating in the physical world. In the physical world. Because that is what has been the soul's ultimate desire from the very beginning. You see? And in order for us to have gotten to that place, we had to fall from grace. We had to descend. That's the part of the biblical reference to Jacob's ladder, ascending and descending, ascending and descending. You see, because Spirit wants me to bring it out into everything for each person to where they're at, whether it's coming from scriptures, whether it's coming from the frequencies, whether it's coming from the planets, whether it's coming from the galaxies, that it all comes together. And whether we label it from different names and stuff, that part is fine. But what's important is, are you receiving the message? Are you receiving the message? And so this is what I was being guided to speak on this very day. And as my soul just reaches out to each and every corner of the world, and knowing that we're coming back together with this grace, we're coming back together and bringing all the pieces together as that state is. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. If it wasn't for putting yourselves back together again, Humpty Dumpty would not have remembered who he and she is. And so as we come together and gather up all these pieces of ourselves, as we're putting all the pieces of ourselves together of this puzzle, we shall no longer continue on a fragmented path. And even if we go up and come back down, it's okay to come back down, because sometimes we got to come back down and go down even deeper so we can rise even higher. And then sometimes we're going to be taking it more than higher. We're going to be widening the perspective. And there's no limit to all of these aspects of higher and lower and wider, because it all fits together as one, as we are returning back into that state of oneness. And so it is. Peace, I say.